what America was and what it can become. This is Liberty Town Hall.
Hey, big event today on Liberty Town Hall. If you missed the first one, you might want to go to our website, libertytownhall.com. Greg Groninger is going to take the helm once again, and he is going to be talking about the Agenda 21 issue, the UN's mandate on private property, and what they plan for the future of the country. libertytownhall.com is our website. You can check the first episode out, or if you missed parts of today's. Glenn, this is
I've been anxious to get the second airing of this taping that we did a while back, because the Agenda 21 is so important that people understand.
It really is.
Can't wait for them to see this.
Looking forward to sharing this with you today. I hope you'll stay tuned and keep an eye out. Don't tune out of the dial at all today, because this is a big event on Liberty Town Hall.
Hello, this is Greg Groninger coming to you from the great state of Michigan today. And I'd like to speak to you about a creation of the United Nations called Agenda 21. They're in our schools with a lot of the NGO help. Let me take another one. It's Integrated Approach to Planning and Management of Land Resources. And if we go to our EPA website, which is entitled Green Communities, you'll see a transportation action plan. This comes from their toolkit that they have out there for green communities. They also have one for smart communities, in case you'd rather be a smart community than a green one. But the transportation action plan says a green community uses and encourages modes of travel other than the automobile. Another one is the conservation of our forest lands. And just to give you an idea of some of the impact, the production in 1992, when Bush first signed that treaty, we were producing about 8 billion board feet per year of timber from our national forests. In 2011, we had slightly over 2 billion board feet, almost down only 25% of what we had been when we started. Also, if the EPA has a manual, it's called the Community-Based Environmental, a resource book for protecting ecosystems in the community. And in their library, it's listed under the how-to. And if you look at some of the chapters in there, and I'll take chapter 1, it's strategies to consider for ecosystem protection. And they have voluntary strategies such as land acquisitions. They also have strategies using local laws such as zoning, property tax and municipal fees, transfer development rights. These are all direct attacks on our land and our property. This brings me to the biodiversity. There's a big map that many people call the pizza map, but it was a map that really saved our bacon, so to speak, when Dr. Kaufman was able to get this presented to the Senate just before they were to vote on the ratification of the Biodiversity Treaty. But the Wildlands Project is really an attack on the rural communities. And the goal of this, if you look at the map and you see all the red, those are core reserves. Those are roadless areas in our wilderness areas, supposedly to allow biodiversity to flourish. Then we have corridors that tie these core reserves together. And again, those have minimal amount of roads, so we don't disturb the residential population of wildlife. And then we have buffer zones, 2 or more buffer zones, which are yellow on this map, to really have a gradual increase and get the inner zones with low density and roads. So after this, we'll come back and look a little bit more about how they're accomplishing this Wildlands Project. Just before the break, we were talking about the Wildlands Project, and we saw what we call the pizza map with all the different colors and explained the reds. And if it's red and yellow, they don't want you there. It's only the black areas, which are really called human habitat zones. And the vision is to have these high rises with a supermarket maybe on the ground floor, have businesses on the next floors, and then people live above them. Think about it, if all the resource in a countryside, the forest lands, the farmlands are all controlled by the government, which they're really trying to acquire through voluntary actions of people turning it over, through easements and buying of those rights. So how are they going to drive the rest of the people who don't want to sell that out? Well, if you make it unacceptable or undesirable to live in these areas, that forces people to move into town. And you can do this by reducing and restricting available services such as water, sewer, phone, electric, fire, or you make those costs outrageous. That's one way of pushing. Zoning restrictions in these areas also make it unacceptable. And increasing property tax and fees. Just up in the Traverse City area, they are now trying to charge people with septic tanks a fee for having a septic tank. So that gives you some idea of the kind of fees that they're starting to want to add on. So through land purchases, conservation easements, grants, and turning farms back into wetlands, these all take properties off of the tax rolls, so the people left have to pay those higher taxes. Then, if you want to get them to move to the city, you can provide incentives. Tax break incentives, subsidies on services, and keeping travel costs high. With the high gas costs, you don't want to be driving from way out in the countryside where, a lot of times they're closing these roads down, and what used to be a 5 or 10 minute travel into town now takes 15, 20, 25 minutes to get there. So looking at some of the programs that's been set up through HUD to really encourage people to move in town, if you happen to hit one of the revitalization areas, now think about it, HUD homes come up for sale because someone did not make the payments and the taxpayers were backing this. But they have what they call the neighbor next door policy. And you can buy a home through the HUD, through that program, if you are law enforcement officer, a firefighter, emergency medical technician, teachers. They're really encouraging them to move into that area. They can buy that home for a 50% discount on the list price for that eligible property in HUD. So they're trying to encourage people, the good people, but trying to encourage them to come into the human habitats. Also, they're looking at nonprofits who can purchase the same kind of a home for a 30% discount, and then they resell them to first-time low-income people, low to moderate income families. Now think about that a minute. If you're trying to buy a home, fix it all up, and resell it in the market, and you have to compete against nonprofits getting 30% discount upon the original purchase price of that property, it's pretty tough to compete. And they also have down payment assistance. And you'll see this on the HUD program in Michigan. It's zero interest, non-amortized loans with no monthly payments. A maximum assistance is $7,500. And they have borrower guidelines to low to moderate income families. And the sale price is limited to $224,500 is the limit on this. And this is for low to moderate income homes. Now, they only have to have 1% down to be able to qualify. Now, that's really setting people up to fail again, and that home will come up again, and it just helps kill the middle class in this country. So those are some of the kind of programs that are out there, and those websites are all shown where you can go check for yourself. Well, there is a way to place a stake in the heart of the Wildlands Project, because if you think about it, if we don't have our own property, you depend upon the government for the wood products, the oil, the minerals, the farm products that are there. If you don't live in a country, you can't dispose of your own waste, you can't drill your own water well. You're really dependent upon the government. And they're taking these lands at record rates. Even some of our state constitutions have it set up that natural resources go back into purchasing more public lands, which again takes it off the tax rolls. But there is a forgotten, or I'll call it a hidden contract out there that really can put a stake in this. And just to let you know, our Constitution, both in Michigan and the federal Constitution, says there's no bill, can pass no bill of attainder or ex post facto law or law impairing the obligation of contracts. This is listed in the United States Constitution as Article 1, Section 10. I know Michigan's is the same, Article 1, Section 10. What kind of a contract would this be? Well, I happen to have one of those contracts, and let me just read the verbiage of the contract itself. Now know ye that the United States of America, in consideration of the premises and in conformity of several acts of Congress, in such case made and provided, have given and granted, and by these present do give and do grant unto the original owner here, Mr. Caddy, and his heirs, the said tract described above, to have and to hold the same together, and now get this, all rights, and the word is all, privileges, all immunities, and appurtenances of whatsoever nature, unto their heirs and assigns forever. After the break, we'll discuss this hidden contract for just a little bit longer. This is Greg Groninger, and just before the break, we were discussing a contract that I have that really puts the stop to the Wildlands Project. And in this contract, if you remember, it said that I, as the assigned, would have all rights, immunities, and privileges of whatsoever nature forever. Well, to have, to hold were words that I didn't quite understand, and fee simple, which if you look at to have and to hold, it is a conveyance of land in terms of fee simple. Well, what was fee simple? I had to look that up. It's the absolute in an estate, which is limited absolutely to the man and his heirs and assigns forever, get this, without any limitations or conditions. This is according to Black's second edition legal dictionary. Right, as a noun, it's taken in a concrete sense, a power, a privilege, a demand, an inheritance in one person, an incident upon another. The rights are defined generally as powers of free action. That's what's in this contract. To give is to yield and to bestow, and to grant is evidence of that transfer via a land or letter patent. And this contract that I'm assigned to was signed by the President of the United States back in 1855. So by carrying this contract forward and preserving all those rights and not crossing the threshold of the federal government or the state government, one is allowed to exercise those privileges and those rights and immunities. So there are ways to go about this. It's very complicated to go into at this time in depth, but there are a lot of resources. You have to be careful with those resources as to where you make those contacts, because there's an awful lot of false flags about what letter patents are all about and how to use them. So to kind of wrap up a little bit in this segment, is there really any hope for a big program that's developed by the United Nations, that's being implemented by our own federal government, that's taking away our lands and our liberty and our freedom? Slowly but surely, it's tightening a noose around our neck. The only way you can do this is to get involved with your local government. And as you saw earlier, they have things at the school, so you need to be involved with the school boards, you need to be involved with the city councils, the planning commissions, county commissions. Get involved. Now you can learn more about this from a number of websites, that if you want to contact me at landandlibertytownhall@gmail.com, we're more than willing to send you a number of websites where you can learn more that we know are valid websites. But when you start working with your local government officials, start out low-key. Learn who's there. Learn what they're all about. What's their real motivations? Most likely they've not heard of this either. I was involved in a planning commission for our township. I didn't know a thing about this. So don't look at them as all evil globalists. They're implementing what they feel they're supposed to be implementing, that the government and places like the American Planning Association are passing down. They hear it at the mayor's conferences. They get all kinds of information to go green, to implement, to be smart, do these developments, create master plans. This is where you need to get involved. Find out their pressures. Go along with them and explain to them, hey, listen, this has been very stealth and low-key. I'm not accusing you of anything, but get involved, get them educated. Hey, and if you can't educate them, you have to replace them. You may just have to step up and run for one of these offices or get involved in a planning commission. So use that as an outreach. Don't just go in and start challenging the people head on that they're the problem, because they're not the problem, but they can be the solution to what's going on once they understand what they're signing up for. A lot of innocent people are being brought along. And then you also need to protect your property rights. And by doing that, you can't just say, I have a letter patent. You need to really defend those property rights. Now, a number of states have started to become very educated on this process, and the state of Alabama passed the law, and that law actually was their Senate Bill 477 from Alabama, and they basically said, we're going to expose and stop any funding of Agenda 21, anything that can be linked back to it. We're also going to stop the funding of any of the NGOs that help support Agenda 21, because it's killing our freedoms. Michigan has also introduced House Bill number 5785 to do the very same thing. And to give you some idea, in 1999 there was a House bill that went nowhere called 833, and that was called the American Land Sovereignty Protection Act. And what they saw and come out in their hearings was that over 68% of the land in our national parks, preserves, and monuments has been turned over to the United Nations. It's controlled by the United Nations. Go look it up. I really hope that you'll take us up, look at some of the links, get really involved, and start to understand more about what Agenda 21, how it's being implemented, and help us save our freedom. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your taking the time to listen to this, and hopefully you'll take more time to investigate for yourself. Thank you, and again, this is Greg Groninger from Michigan.
If you caught today's episode, and hopefully our first episode on Agenda 21 recently, I'm telling you, you probably think is just like I do, that Agenda 21 could quite easily be the most dangerous plot, for lack of a better term, that's ever been perpetrated on mankind, at least by an international body. This is some scary stuff right now, Glenn. I am just worried every time I think about the prospects of Agenda 21.
Well, people are not paying attention to what goes on at the UN nowhere near enough. We have the small arms ban treaty going on. We have a countless number of ways that are trying to supersede our constitutional rights. And if you read the Constitution, they have a case for it. If we can do it in a treaty, that supersedes the Constitution in a lot of ways. So we have to really pay attention to it. That's on the UN and personal property rights. We have Craig and Tom, or Ken and Tom doing specials on actual property rights and deeds versus patents on our properties and stuff. These issues people need to pay more attention to, Greg. It's really concerning. Pretty soon you won't have liberty left at all. That's what I'm worried about.
The unfortunate thing is, Glenn, that's the goal of what's being pushed not just by the UN, but many people in our own government believe the idea that the manifest destiny of this world is we went from single groups to small villages to eventually walled cities to small nations to regionalization of nations like the EU, Security Prosperity Act, and then the eventual goal of creating a government around the planet. And then when you talk with those same people, they're like Carl Sagan at that point. They say, well, we're supposed to build starships and go to the stars so we can find other life forms, like Star Trek.
That's their excuse. They're saying we have to plan for the future, plan for the future. So we need to reserve all of this land and area where we can grow crops and herd everybody into the cities so that we can control it right there. It's a matter of taking away your liberties one after another. And Agenda 21 is huge movement towards that goal.
Well, and it goes right into the kookiness that is being presented. I mean, recently I've saw new articles about how we've got to get more regionalization because we're going to start colonizing other worlds soon.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already talking about, oh, we're going to colonize the moon and we're going to colonize Mars. That's not going to happen in our grandchildren's lifetime, and they know it. And it's sad to see that they're playing these political games based on these grand schemes that they know will never happen.
Well, if you look at the, was it Georgia Guidestones?
Georgia Guidestones.
They say we should be cut down to 500,000 or 500 million people worldwide. Well, that's going to be a problem for sure.
Well, I've got an idea for you. Just because they say 500 million worldwide, Satan wants to cut it to 0. Go look it up for yourself. You'll see what I'm talking
Absolutely.
about. This is some powerful conversation. I'm glad you were able to take part with us. Check out our website, libertytownhall.com. I'm Greg Marshall. He's Glenn Wilson. Join us for the next Liberty Town Hall.
The basis of our political systems is the right of the people to make and to alter their constitutions of government, but the Constitution which at any time exists till changed by an explicit and authentic act of the whole people is sacredly obligatory upon all. George Washington, Farewell Address, September 17th, 1796.